public arenas. Please help me welcome Jack Davis.
Thank you, Meg. I didn't realize I was all those things. It's nice to know. Thank you. What a wonderful introduction. And it's really a pleasure to be here this evening. When Meg reached out to me last spring, I think it was, and asked me if I might consider being, come to speak at the gala, I didn't hesitate because I was aware of Meg's work from the National Eagle Center. We met in 2020 when I went to the National Eagle Center while I was researching the Bald Eagle book. And you may or may not know, the National Eagle Center has the largest collection of bald eagle memorabilia, objects, documents in the world. And really an amazing collection, 40,000 items that were donated to the National Eagle Center by its owner, Preston Cook, who is not a hoarder, but you would think so. He collected all these items over the course of more than 50 years. But what he learned as he was collecting, which I think is a wonderful story, is that he learned that what I've done here, I've got to make this accessible to the public. And that's when, for awareness and education. And that's what brought me to the National Eagle Center. That's what brought him to the National Eagle Center back in the 2010s. And from there, we launched a national bird initiative from when Meg was director there. Believe it or not, the bald eagle is not the national bird. And we have no national bird yet, but we have a unanimous vote from the Senate, and we're waiting on the House to vote. So it may live up to its mythic title soon enough. So, but tonight, what I want to do, I mean, Meg had mentioned some of my books, and as a writer, I write not for an academic audience. I write for a mainstream readership, and in doing that, I discovered the power of story in reaching my readers, but also keeping me interested in writing about what I wanted to write, because there's an element of creativity that goes into crafting a story, right? And so, which is not to mean there's fiction. I mean, obviously there's fiction and nonfiction, but as a nonfiction writer, at least I hope I'm not incorporating any fiction into my stories. But tonight I wanted to talk to you about stories, and about how stories have historically shaped our relationship with non-human species. You know, how stories have really shaped how we view non-human species, how we treat them. And I want to start by talking about William Bartram. How many of you have heard of William Bartram? Okay, a couple of you. A remarkable individual. So William Bartram was an early American naturalist from Philadelphia, and he's probably best remembered for spending nearly 4 years traveling the southeastern colonies at just before the Revolutionary War, on the eve of the Revolutionary War. So the Carolinas, Georgia, and yes, Florida was a British colony. There were 2 Florida British colonies. Now, your history books up here in Virginia don't tell you that, or in New England. They only talk about Jamestown around here, I know. But there were 15 colonies. There weren't 13. So I tried to correct that on Wikipedia once, and then somebody came behind me and put it back to 13. But in any case, so William Bartram is famous for that expedition that he conducted in the southern colonies. He was, again, he was a naturalist, so he was interested in learning about the plants and animals in the southeastern part of colonial North America. And he was a Quaker. and he exhibited a deep humility for the natural world and all of its creatures, even alligators, which are prominent in Florida, a beast that most of his fellow colonists knew nothing about or very little about. But he understood alligators. He understood this creature and its world in a way that most did not. Even those who were familiar with the alligator didn't look at the alligator in the way that that Bartram did. For example, he wrote. Now, keep in mind, this is in the 18th century. He wrote, "The alligator, I venture to assert, is a necessary link in the great chain of animated nature. For if they were not created and their increase limited by providence, then fishes, frogs, and other amphibious animals would be so abundant as to become disagreeable and pestiferous." A pest. I love that word, pestiferous. Now I'm going to put that find a place for that in my next book. And okay, now occasionally Bartram would lapse into harsher expressions, referring to the alligator as a quote unquote hideous monster. But still, his profound respect for nature set him sharply at odds with Western culture and science. He was a rare scientist who spoke of the balance of nature, that all within was interconnected and essential to the health of the whole. And again, his words about the alligator is a necessary link in the great chain of animated nature. I mean, it's poetry, the great chain of animated nature. And his understanding of life suggested an early ecological understanding of nature that simply did not exist in the 18th century, really not until the 20th century. And his views also departed from the conventional belief that humans were separate and superior to nature. So in the hierarchy of life, there was God above humans, and humans above all other things on earth, which they were supposed to take dominion over. Instead, Bartram's scientific and his spiritual beliefs resonated with indigenous perspectives of the circle of life, in which no member within that circle, including humans, was superior to another. He respected the kindred bond Native people retain with animals, whom they regarded as ancestral beings. He spent a lot of time with the Cherokee when he was in the Southeast. And the Cherokee believed that, quote, creatures of the woods were once like us, or we like them, in times beyond our memory. In indigenous origin stories, which endowed non-human animals with the power to shape the world, were a particular interest of Bartram. In Cherokee culture, for example, a brave water beetle creates land on earth by diving to the bottom of the ocean to retrieve mud that will grow into terra firma. Turtle, coyote, raven, hawk, bear, spider, bison, wolf, beaver, otter, salmon, frog, owl, eagle, and others appear in Native stories as creators, as guides and messengers explaining the origins of the world and of humans, origins of humans, and of the natural elements. Enslaved African American stories paid similar reverence to animals. Rabbit created the earth. Spider instilled it with wisdom. Turtle exemplified strength, just like the box turtle we saw here earlier. And wit. That's a pretty smart turtle. And of course, perseverance. The monkey exhibited cleverness. The owl, foresight. Stories can explain the world, but they can also distort it. And unfortunately, that's happened a lot throughout history. A proverb rooted in West African culture proclaims that until the lion learns how to write, every story will glorify the hunter. I'll say that again. Until the lion learns how to write, every story will glorify the hunter. And that proverb has traditionally been applied to oppressed peoples whose stories have usually been suppressed by the dominant culture, just regarded or rejected as mere fairy tales. But that proverb also applies to the narratives that the dominant culture has constructed around non-human life, around animals, around wildlife. Humans have been telling stories ever since the first cave drawings, and animals frequently appear in those drawings, hunted animals. And stories are the original archives of a group's collective memory. They provide this nicely packaged narrative home for facts and details, giving fluency and narrative and structure to these facts and details. And then, of course, they also ensure that the beliefs and customs and values and histories survive across generation. They're vehicles. Stories are vehicles that move things across generations. And in some cultures, stories reinforce bonds with nature. In others, as in Western culture, they have programmed people with pernicious biases that become a lens for seeing the world. And such biases have had profound consequences for wild animals by placing them in categories of good and bad, based solely on their value to American society. The good we welcome and we embrace. We take them, we keep them as pets. The bad we distance ourselves from, or remove them from our presence altogether. And Western culture has a long history of treating certain predator animals as obstacles to human endeavors, predator animals that should be eradicated. In traditional folklore, in stories, they are typically cast as unsympathetic characters. Prime examples are Little Red Riding Hood and the Three Little Pigs. The wolf in these stories is cunning and dangerous, representing a threat not only of the individual wolf, but representing a threat of the larger wild of nature, a threat to social and economic progress. Bears sometimes appear as sympathetic characters in stories, as in Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and of course the Winnie the Pooh series. But bears are also antagonists, as in the lore of Hugh Glass and the grizzly bear. Hugh Glass was a real-life trapper who was mauled by a grizzly and left for dead by his companions. And after surviving this attack, Glass set out on a bloody quest for revenge. And that story has appeared in various versions in numerous publications and films. First, in 1825 in a popular literary journal, and then, of course, you may know this, more recently in the Academy Award-winning 2015 film, The Revenant, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, who won an Academy Award for doing a bunch of moaning throughout that movie. He's a fantastic actor, but I think that was one of his weaker performances. But anyway. And then, of course, there's the tale of Beauty and the Beast, published by a French novelist in 1740, but best known for the 1991 Disney feature animation. And the Beast, of course, is portrayed as a dangerous creature, symbolizing the fears of the untamed, animalistic nature of predators, until the Beast is transformed back into a prince. And then he is, this prince of a guy. But in another hugely popular Disney film, one of my favorites, is The Jungle Book. The principal antagonist in The Jungle Book, as you probably know, is the Bengal tiger Shere Khan. A secondary antagonist in the film is Kaa, the python, the Indian rock python. And both threaten the boy, Mowgli. And now that's in the Disney film. In Kipling's original story, however, called The Python, is a friend and a mentor to Mowgli. Kaa is a storyteller who shares with Mowgli how he, Mowgli, came to live in the jungle after Shere Khan killed his father. And Kaa shows Mowgli the power of the red flower, which is fire, and explains that Mowgli can restore the harmony of the forest, or of the jungle, excuse me. And that storyline would not do for Disney, however, which turned Kaa into a predator. And I'm sure you all remember the character in the film with yellow hypnotic eyes, big yellow hypnotic eyes, and this entrancing hissing voice. You know, Kaa is devious and cunning. Think of the song, Trust in Me. All right. Disney's portrayal is a profound corruption of Kipling's original character, but it is nevertheless much in line with the image of snakes in Western folklore and biblical stories, beginning, of course, with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Now, like bears, bald eagles have been both protagonists and antagonists, portrayed simultaneously as the embodiment of American values and character, but also as an inveterate enemy to human welfare, no better than the wolf, the coyote, and the mountain lion. And Americans have always loved the image of the bald eagle, emblazoning it, putting it on everything from the Great Seal of the United States to China wear, to leather motorcycle jackets, to PJs, to bedspreads, to lampshades. I mean, you name it. We can't escape the bald eagle. And because we love the image, always have. Americans always loved the image of the bald eagle. But historically, stories of the deviant bald eagle have far outnumbered stories of the good bald eagle. It was a common belief, and one that was endorsed by ornithologists well into the 20th century, that bald eagles carried away all kinds of livestock, pigs and calves and sheep. Bald eagles can't pick up any, they're way too heavy for bald eagles. Now, you have a chicken in your backyard, they'll take that. As one chicken rancher I interviewed when I was writing the book said, yeah, chickens are low-hanging fruit for bald eagles. And he wanted the free range into the free range business and down in Southwest Georgia. And it was all fine initially until one bald eagle showed up one winter, and he started losing chickens. And he said, well, it's calling the ones I probably can't market anyway. But then the next year, that bald eagle brought his buddies. And before long, within a few years, he had 100 bald eagles coming every winter. And for that low-hanging fruit. But throughout the 19th, now this is honest gosh true, tens of thousands of newspaper stories told of the bad bald eagle doing such things as stealing livestock, and of people. Let me put it this way: when I was doing the research on the bald eagle book, I did a search on newspapers.com, 3-letter search in quotation marks, in a time frame from 1850 to I think 1920. So the 3 words were bald eagle shot. I came up with over 140,000 hits. And so, but these newspapers would report on stories of bald eagles being shot, being clubbed, being trapped, and rarely killed, ultimately, rarely offering words of condemnation for the killing of a national symbol. As the proverb says, every story will glorify the hunter. Even John James Audubon hated the living bald eagle and glorified the hunter, most especially himself. There are few people as arrogant and self-absorbed as John James Audubon. I don't treat him very kindly in the book. And Now, at the same time, countless stories maintain that bald eagles had a penchant for not only stealing livestock, but flying off with human babies. Mothers were warned, don't leave your infant outside unattended unless you want a bald eagle to carry it away. A mother did that in a 1908 silent action drama film titled Saved from an Eagle's Nest, which you can watch on YouTube. And it was produced by Edison Studios, sensationalizing this myth. Now, here's one thing that I learned that was really interesting about this movie, this 1908 movie. So the father eventually rescues his child, who was the mother, the negligent mother left it outside unattended. The father eventually rescues the child from the bald eagle's nest. And the bald eagle, by the way, in the film is clearly on wires. And carrying away a live infant who is crying. This is in the days before, labor protection for child actors. Whose poor kid is being carried away by this prop eagle on wires. But the father comes along and saves it, gets in a fight with the bald eagle on a ledge and kicks it over the side. Guess who played the father? And I think you guys will know because you're from Virginia or you live in Virginia. D.W. Griffith. Now, who is D.W. Griffith? So D.W. Griffith was panned by the critics. It was terrible. He was overacted. So D.W. Griffith decided, I'm going to start directing for movies. And the most famous movie he directed was The Birth of a Nation. You know that. I hope please don't act like my Gen Z students who would have no idea what The Birth of a Nation is, right? Okay. That's the film that reignited the resurrection of the Ku Klux Klan, a 1915 film. But also for many years, McGuffey Readers, which was the most read publication in the 19th century next to the Bible. The McGuffey Readers featured the story of townsfolk rising up after an eagle steals away a young girl. And the illustration that accompanied the story is a girl who must be at least 10 years old. So as a consequence of these stories, society closed ranks around the bald eagle, and it was truly considered a civic duty to kill them. And kill them Americans did. By the 19th century, bald eagles were missing in action from the eastern seaboard states and many of the Midwestern states. Now, by the late 19th century, there were exceptions to the conventional narrative of the bald eagle as an antagonist. There were those who stepped forward and said enough is enough and started constructing a new narrative about the bald eagle. And one person who was prominent in doing that was a woman by the name of Rosalie Edge. And she, in the 1920s, 1930s, she took on National Audubon, which would not dispute the conventional narrative around the bald eagle being a threat to American livestock and American babies. They refused to. And Rosalie Edge, who was a member of the National Audubon, said, you're wrong. And so I'm going to fix this. And so she took on National Audubon, disgraced them in public, started her own organization, and was eventually able to get Congress, first in 1930, to consider a bald eagle protection bill. That failed because Audubon stepped in and said, no, you can't, bald eagle, no, you can't protect the bald eagle. It doesn't migrate. So the bald eagle belongs to the individual states. And if you pass a federal law protecting the bald eagles, you'll be violating states' rights. You guys in Virginia know all about states' rights. So they tried again in 1935, and finally in 1940, the advocates of bald eagle protections prevailed. Congress passed the Bald Eagle Protection Act, which is now the Bald Eagle and Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act in 1940. And sadly, 5 years later, DDT was released to the general market, to the open market, consumer market. And we all know the toll that DDT took on American wildlife. I don't have to go into any details, but it was devastating, not just for birds, but also for fish. And so for a fishing raptor like an eagle, like an osprey, and then of course pelicans, who are not raptors, but pelicans dependent on fish, it was devastating for their populations as well. And but what's going on is when we are saturating America, at least the lower 48 states, with DDT, we see the rise of the science of ecology coming into the American Academy, into American universities. First in the Midwestern universities, the Ivy Leagues of the East stuck their nose up to ecology initially and didn't regard it as a legitimate field of science. But ecology became an important science eventually by the 1960s. And with the rise of ecology, nature takes on a new image. Humans are connected to nature. All is connected to nature. That which supports wildlife supports us. The bald eagle's habitat is our habitat. So nature now has a new story. And part of that is it's our home. Nature is our home. And so you see at the same time in the 1950s, late 40s and 50s, a proliferation of books that teach about the importance of wildlife and instill values of conservation. 1947, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas published The Everglades, River of Grass. And that book really redefined our understanding of swamps and showed us that swamps are not just a wasteland or wastelands, but vital ecosystems where wildlife is dependent on the health of the whole. And Marjorie Stoneman Douglas emphasized throughout her activist career, we are dependent upon that, the Everglades too. She taught about microclimates and cycling life. She taught about the circle of life in that remarkable book. And Rachel Carson in 1951 published The Sea Around Us, an eloquent portrayal of marine ecosystems and how animals interacted with that system and each other. Again, the cycling and circle of life. Peter Matheson published Wildlife in America in 1959. Nobody remembers this about Peter Matheson. And in that book, he looked at the human impact on native species, and he systematically documented the decline of American wildlife. And all three of these writers, Carson, a scientist, Matheson, a novelist, and Douglas, a short fiction writer, recognized the power of story in reaching their audiences. And one thing that I find particularly interesting is that around this time, scientists and historians rediscovered the very guy who had long before taken nature's perspective of life on Earth, William Bartram. In 1951, the Pulitzer Prize-winning poet Mark Van Doren, his son Charles was the guy who was involved in the game show scandal. Mark Van Doren and Dover Publications republished Bartram's original and very much magisterial 1791 book about his nature expedition through the southern colonies. And I should point out that when the book was published in 1791, it received a poor reception in the United States. It may have had to do with the 50-word title of the book. I don't know. Thankfully, today we only call it the William Bartram's Travels or Bartram's Travels or The Travels. But people thought his stories about wildlife in the Southeast were so sensational that he was surely writing fiction. Yet the poets, Samuel Taylor Coleridge and William Wordsworth, each paid tribute to Bartram by borrowing imagery from his book for Coleridge's poem Kubla Khan and Wordsworth's poem Ruth. And The new narratives of the time that avoided myth and sensationalism and emphasized the perspective of wildlife were, of course, not limited to adult books. Countless children's books came along, putting nature at the center of stories. Dr. Seuss, The Lorax, Jane Yolen, Owl Moon, Kate Mesner, Over and Under the Pond, Shel Silverstein, the Giving Tree. And thanks in part to ecological science and awareness of how we fouled our nest, a new era of environmentalism emerged in the late 20th century. And among those who became advocates of environmental protection were writers using their storytelling voice. Annie Dillard, Pilgrim at Tinker Creek. Roderick Nash, Wilderness and American Mind. David Gesner, Return of the Osprey, also his book, The Tarbell Chronicles. John D. MacDonald, his novels, A Flash of Green, and Condominium, which talked about, which in the 70s was criticizing building condominiums on barrier islands. And he lived in Sarasota, by the way, that was just hit by it was where Milton, I forget these, so many hurricanes, Milton made landfall. Carl Hiaasen, Sick Puppy. Terry Tempest Williams, Refuge. Edward Abbey, his non-fiction book, Desert Solitaire, and his novel, The Monkey Wrench Gang, both of which I use in my classes. Wendell Berry, The Unsettling of America. Margaret Atwood, That Year of the Flood. And there was Archie Carr from Florida, who won literary awards for his science writing. And so many more. They all craft stories to evoke in readers' empathy for nature and its living creatures. Their own narratives, however, are influenced by, of course, broader cultural, historical, and to be sure, ecological narratives. And they've tended to be at the forefront. Writers tend to be, particularly fiction writers, I would argue, tend to be at the forefront. I'm not including myself in this group, okay? But they tend to be at the forefront of changing sensibilities. It's really, I mean, Elizabeth Gilbert offers in an entire lesson in ecology and environmental ethics in one sentence in her wonderful, The Signature of All Things. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It's just a beautifully written book, so smart. And the protagonist is a woman, a female scientist of the 19th century. And so she offers this lesson in ecology and environmental ethics in this one sentence when she says of her protagonist, Alma knew that the simplest of creatures, a fly, for example, was equal to the finest of human beings in the essential feature of life. Each was alive and each was strived to remain alive for as long as it possibly could. Each, therefore, was worthy of respect. Bartram would easily recognize in these words his own sensibilities. So as we see the narrative changing in the post-World War II decades, the late 20th century and on into the 21st century, we also see, parallel to that, a rise of across the country of hundreds of wildlife centers, and ranging from small rehabilitation clinics to large conservation and educational facilities that are dedicated to the care, the rehabilitation, and return of wildlife to their original homes. And I mean, think about it. Storytelling and narrative are central to their efforts in educating and raising awareness about wildlife and wildlife conservation. They use videos, photos, wildlife cams, social media, live educational programs, presentations, and of course the feathered and the scaled and the furred ambassadors, and record keeping. They tell the story of all these things tell the story of a particular species, place in the ecosystem, and the challenges each has historically faced and continue to face. As do other centers, the Wildlife Center of Virginia, the staff and the medical team, the volunteers, reconstruct to the best of their ability the story of each new patient they treat, where it came from, how it was rescued and delivered to the center, how it was injured, and what the injury is, how it is treated, and where and how it was released. Blood samples. Think about blood samples from each, and blood samples are taken from each patient. Blood samples from each patient are examined to learn the deeper story about the individual and its species, and the environment it shares with others, with other animals. And of course, again, that's our environment too. And all this information, all these stories are cataloged on the National Wild One database, sponsored by the Wildlife Center of Virginia. And we might think of the Wild One as a database of scientific information, and it is, but it's also a repository of the life histories of animals. And their narratives speak not just about themselves, but about us and our relationship with them. A contemporary and friend of Bartram, the artist and naturalist Charles Wilson Peale, had it right when he said, "The beasts and birds will teach thee." We have a lot to learn from their stories. From the 18th century to the 21st century, while finding our way through a burdensome history for wildlife and ourselves, for as the Lakota author and educator Luther Standing Bear said long ago, we drink the same water and we breathe the same air as wildlife. But from the 18th century to the 21st, our country has come full circle, back to Bartram and Native peoples and their stories, and our understanding of and our attitudes toward wildlife. Now, originally, I wanted to end this talk by saying, the hunter no longer receives the glory. The lion has learned to write. But then as I thought about this ending, I realized that the statement is only half true. It's true that now only the rare non-conventional story glorifies the hunter. But it's not true that the lion has learned to write. And until some AI technology comes along to change that, and I'm sure University of Florida hopes that it beats everybody else to the punch. But until some AI technology comes along to change that, teaches the lion how to write, we remain its scribe. So we write for the lion. But now we recognize the nobility of nature. We shatter pestiferous, to use Bartram's word, pestiferous myths. And we try to tell stories on the terms of our non-human relatives. Thank you.
Do a little adjustment here. Does that work? Okay. Thank you, Jack. I can't imagine anything more wonderful than what you just shared with us. First and foremost, from the fact that for the short visit that you and your daughter Willa came to the Wildlife Center and got what this incredible group of people do, and the importance of the animals, every single one of them, in our work. So thank you. Thank you for taking that away.
You're welcome. I meant to point out that after Meg invited me to come talk at the gala, I said, yeah, I'd be happy to. Can I bring my daughter with me? She's a pre-vet major at UC Santa Barbara. And I'd like for her to see what you do here. And the center was so accommodating. We spent the day here, even got to release, they were red-shouldered, right? Yeah,
Yep,
red-shouldered
two.
hawks. She got to release one, my daughter, who was a sophomore, and I got to release the other. And she was her jaw was dropped the whole time we were in the, they were treating the various patients. And it was really thrilling for her. It just cemented her desire to become a wildlife vet.
Yes. So thank you, team, for this great
Yes,
work.
absolutely.
The release of the red shoulders was quite interesting when they kind of flew over their heads, but I got some really good pictures of Willa. You weren't quite as shocked because you were ready for it.
Yeah, Willow went first, and the bird came back at her. Well, there were dogs. There were dogs out there. And there was a tree behind us. We weren't, and we had to move away from the dogs, and ended up with trees behind us.
And they just went up.
They went up in the trees.
Yeah, that was great. So if anybody wants to participate in releases, just reach out to Connor. He'll make sure you can do that. Thank you very much for your words. I am deeply honored that you're here. As I've said to many people about your work, because of the bald eagle connection that we had in the past, the work that you did to bring attention to this incredible species. No, Benjamin Franklin did not want the turkey to be our national bird. Jack has taken care of that message in his publication.
And if you know what he wanted, you'll have to read the book.
Yeah, there you go.
It'll blow your mind. No, truly, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it blew my mind.
Good old Ben. Anyway, so I have a series of questions that I want to ask you, but I kind of want to circle back in your talk about Audubon. Mm-hmm. So you're pretty straightforward in your thoughts about early John James Audubon, which as an organization has had its challenges in the recent past, and you're writing an article for Audubon. So what's the shift in the organization that made you say, I want to write an article and work with this publication, given some of the history of the organization?
Yeah, I mean, so Brian Stevenson, if you're familiar with him, who started this organization in Montgomery, Equal Justice Initiative, years ago, to defend people on death rows, has always said, you're not the worst thing you did. So certainly there's some redeeming values. I know there was some contention between the National Legal Center in the early years and National Audubon, and which we don't need to go into here. But I mean, it's an organ. I mean, it's the largest conservation organization in the country. It's the wealthiest too, and it reaches a lot of people.
Yes, it does.
And so, writing for Audubon magazine, brings me to an audience.
Good.
And the audience is, I mean, we all, maybe not all of us, but. I mean, look, Virginia's got its checkered past. You're living here, right?
Good point. I came here. There you go. No, I'm an Audubon fan, so I understand. But
the guy or the organization?
No, not the guy.
Okay. And by the way, he really did want the turkey to be the national bird.
I know.
And in fact, he had it embossed on his or stamped on his calling cards, an image of the wild turkey.
But we also have to remember he got shoved aside for years in the U.S. to do his drawings and whatever. He had to go to England.
Oh, right. Yeah. That was
finally get it done. So, all right, let's get on to more important things. As an academic, you've talked a lot about stories. As you well know, academic disciplines often devalue the importance of a story. As a historian and someone who has that publication requirement, how do you justify that in the Florida system to say this is really important to my students, to academia, to the work I'm doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. In the 70s, there was a really strong movement to turn history into a social science and to separate it from the humanities and turn it into a social science. And But ultimately, there was pushback against that, and a lot of historians who said, no, we've got to bring the narrative back to history writing. After all, I mean, story is in the name, right? History. And and one thing that drew me to history as when I entered graduate school was the potential to write stories, write stories of the past. But because I frame my writing in stories, it doesn't mean that I ignore academic rigor in my research and my analysis. What I do is I just try to. You write a book, a traditional academic book for your colleagues. What happens to it? It ends up on the cold steel shelf of a university library. And so what you do is you pull your book off the shelf, open it to page 100, put a $20 bill in there, come back 10 years later, and retrieve your $20 bill without interest in more ways than one, obviously. And that just doesn't make sense to me. I think our environmental challenges are too important to me for me to, have to try the $20 test.
Yeah.
I want to reach as many people as possible. It wasn't easy, and it's not always easy making that leap from publishing with an academic press to a mainstream press. And I tried it first with the Margie Stoneman Douglas book I wrote, biography of her, and I couldn't get anybody interested. I couldn't find an agent who would represent me. And I ended up publishing it with an academic press. And I'm really sad because I think she's an extremely important individual that she's being forgotten.
Well, and she was a preceding winner of the Distinguished Authors of Florida.
Right. Yeah. Which so I feel as though I'm in really wonderful company.
Yeah.
They're there. And, but so the golf book was the first book that I was able to find an agent for. And I should say, really quick, when I was shopping around for agents, so I queried with 24 agents, and one responded, and who's my agent now. But before, we joined forces. A good friend of mine, convinced his agent to talk to me. And so out of a favor to him, she did. And as we're talking on the phone about my golf book proposal and the chapter sample I sent to her, which she loved, she was very condescending. And then she said, why, people want to know about the Gulf of Mexico. Why can't they just go to the Wikipedia? And so I said, well, I guess we're not going to be able to make a deal here. And
probably not.
Which is good, because I had talked to my agent, the woman who became my agent the day before, and I really liked her and wanted to go with her.
So where did you get your environmental focus and sensibilities? Where did that come from, so that's the focus of your subsequent work?
Yeah, I wasn't always sure until I sat down and started writing the Gulf of Mexico book. And as I was writing, my mind kept casting back to memories of my childhood on Santa Rosa Sound in North Florida. And I really ultimately realized that this was where the Gulf of Mexico book began. And we lived in a house and we had moved from a baby boom neighborhood teeming with kids and bicycles to a house on the Sound with only seasonal neighbors and no kids to play with. Mm-hmm. So I spent all my time out on the Sound in a little boat I had. The boat, the Sound became the cul-de-sac of my youth. The boat became my bicycle, and my rod and reel became my bat and ball. And of course, my dog was with me. And I just, I just ended up feeling immersed in this environment, and again, never left it behind. And growing up in Florida, you see a lot of showy wildlife, but you also see a lot of destruction. So you see that paradox that I tend to write about in my books. And so when I went to graduate school, I learned there was such thing as environmental history, and it was just struck me as immediately appealing.
Fabulous. So why do you write the historical side when there's so many contemporary current issues that need to be addressed? How does that blend for you?
Yeah. Well, typically my writing or my books go way back. The Gulf of Mexico from the geological origin of the Gulf to the present. So I do bring things up in the present, but and so what I'm looking for as a historian is the foundation or the basis for our contemporary problems. And with the hope that we can learn something from our past, not just simply what we did wrong, but often what we did right.
Mhm.
There are plenty of stories from the past to celebrate. I mean, one is, the bald eagle, and twice we pushed it to the brink of extinction, but ultimately we redeemed ourselves, and we brought it back. And of course, the bald eagle played no small role in that itself. And that's a great conservation success story. It can serve as a model. I mean, you think about when I was growing up in Florida, all of us from the baby boom era, we grew up when 2/3 of the nation's waters and coastal waters, inland waters and coastal waters, were unsafe for swimming and fishing. But then we passed the 1972 Clean Water Act, and we have reversed that. Now only 1/3, it's still too much, but 1/3 of bodies of water in the United States are unsafe for fishing. We brought around the Gulf of Mexico bays and bayous and sounds that were on the brink of ecological death back to teeming life. Sadly, we're doing some backsliding now, and which I will touch on in my next book.
Yeah. So tell us about your next book.
So my next book is the title of it, the working title at least, is The American Coast: History and Prophecy at Land's End. And I'm looking at the wider American coast, both the East Coast and West Coast, with the exclusion of Alaska, and using history to try to help us better understand how we ended up with our unprecedented ecological problems, environmental problems we're facing on the American coast.
So do you feel that the coast issues are worse than more internal issues on North America?
Well, I won't go as far as saying worse, but the coast is certainly on the front lines.
Okay.
And there's so much we're dealing with. One of the challenges is us. We won't stop building on the coast.
Sure.
You probably all saw the images of construction cranes during these hurricanes, and the one that fell in St. Petersburg, Florida, and landed on the building across the street, which ironically is the building where that houses the Tampa Bay Times, which was doing such a wonderful job, or did such a wonderful job of covering the hurricane. And that crane is building, it's going back up, the tallest building on the Gulf Coast. We just won't stop. And I used to live in St. Petersburg, and I had a second home there for a number of years, and I sold that long ago because I knew that this place was in trouble.
Yep.
Gainesville, where I live now, is an equidistance between the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico in the middle of the state, has become a climate change refugee destination. And we have a lot of people moving away from the coast coming to Gainesville, which is good for the value of my house.
There you go. There you go. So I have one more question, and I'm going to open it up for questions from the audience. So what did winning the Pulitzer do for your career and your work?
It was life-changing. I think before the Pulitzer, I was an academic who was a writer, but now I'm a writer who was an academic. So I think it changed my identity. It's also it'll always be. Was one thing that's interesting is it'll always be. I've learned is that it'll always be a part of my identity,
Mhm.
and which I'm not complaining about. It obviously helped book sales.
Sure.
I've given since it hundreds and hundreds of talks around the country because of it. And so I've been, I don't know, it's lent me some degree of authority, I think, as a public individual who that I don't think that I had before, even though I'm the same person, and I may not sound like it, but I really am humbled by the Pulitzer Prize, particularly when I'm in a room with others. And I think, how am I among this company?
Well, I did ask you earlier today when you and I were just chatting about, do the Pulitzer Prize-winning authors kind of get together?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I've met a few of them, but
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, we don't. Maybe we should start
a Pulitzer Prize-winning club.
club.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
So, does anybody in the audience have questions you'd like to ask of Jack? Oh, come on.
We covered everything?
We've covered everything. You know everything now.
What's your favorite food?
Airport sushi. At least today it was. You really want to know? Do you really want to know? Yeah, I guess you do. Popcorn. And
What a guy.
I make the best popcorn in the world. That I will brag about. And if you want to know my secret recipe, you might persuade me to share it.
Oh, my question is, the book you said we should read, towards the end of your talk there, you said there was a book, you went by it so fast I didn't catch it. I wanted to write it.
Signature of All Things
Yes.
by Elizabeth Gilbert. Yeah, beautiful book. Smart, super smart.
Yes, in the back. Sarah?
I feel like in environmental history, you deal with a lot of doom and gloom and apocalypticism. How do you confront that, especially with the current state of the world?
Yeah. That, as an environmental writer, I recognize that readers can, become glassy-eyed and just, exhausted or fatigued by all of the doom and the gloom. And so one reason why I decided to write the Bald Eagle book is because I wanted to write an uplifting story. And I have a good friend of mine who we call each other writing partners. That's Cynthia Barnett, who wrote Rain, a natural and cultural history. Wonderful book. It was a semifinalist for the National Book Award, and most recently, Sound of the Sea, about the cultural and natural history of mollusks, or seashells. And we're constantly challenging ourselves to try to. I mean, you can't avoid the upsetting, the depressing, but at the same time, you want to, give your readers a break from that and give them a reason to read the book, but also a reason to think about these things, and that it's not all doom and gloom. That there are success stories that are that are worth knowing. And so, and also, I try to inject a little humor into my writing as well. Yes.
Me personally, I'm a little late to this wildlife rescue thing, and I'm really enjoying it. But I have 7 grandchildren. Do you have any recommendations for reading for our children and our grandchildren?
How old are they?
They range from 8 to 15.
Well, some of the classic books that I named, but the 8-year-old, let's see. Gosh, there are. Let me think here. Jennifer, do you have some recommendations? Yeah, the Lorax, but they might. I mean, even though even the 15-year-old would like the Lorax, and I mean, who doesn't? I mean, of all ages, who doesn't? Um, you know, I'm gonna plug Margie Stoneman Douglas again. I mean, she wrote this beautiful. She wrote some YA books, and she wrote this beautiful one called Freedom River, which is set in the Everglades, and it's about three boys. One a Miccosukee Indian, the other one an enslaved boy, and the other one a white boy who's well off, but they're best friends, and they spend all their time exploring the Everglades. And you know, that's another wonderful one that I've recommended to people before, and they appreciated it for young readers. I mean, there are so many out there, and I'm sorry, I'm just blanking right now, and I can't. Maybe before the evening's over, a couple other titles. Any other titles you can think of? What? Which one? Who? Yeah, Carl Heisen's Who. Yeah. And by the way, I'm really enjoying Bad Monkey, the series with Vince Vaughn. Anyway, based on his book Bad Monkey.
In the same vein, I wanted to ask you about your students now. What's the material that you are teaching them? What are they responding to? Are they getting it? What's their degree of engagement with the stuff you teach?
It's good. The engagement is. We have really talented students at University of Florida, and I appreciate them a lot. And I've taught a number of generations, and I'm most excited about the Gen Zs. I really love teaching them. Maybe that's because my daughter's a Gen Z, and I, know her friends and everything. But so there may be a bias there. But they think everything we've done, is to the environment's ridiculous, and they're upset by it, and they realize what they're inheriting, and they want to change that. I hope they do by getting out and voting, getting out to vote as well. But I mentioned a couple, Desert Solitaire, Edward Abbey, and Monkey Wrench Gang. The others are more academic books. I do try to, like with Monkey Wrench Gang, I do try to bring in some novels. I recommended a book to a couple tonight that I use in my class, Ecology of a Cracker Childhood, which is a memoir, beautifully written memoir growing up in Longleaf Country in South Georgia. And they like my book on the Gulf. I give them a PDF copy. I don't make them buy it. And but they do. And a book I'm using that they really like in a class now, I'm teaching on American rivers, is The Source by Martin Doyle, which is about the country's history with rivers.
We can do one more question.
Yeah.
When you talk about your interest and concerns with human interaction and the environment,
With
human interaction and the environment, and I guess maybe from a bit of a selfish perspective, from what we're working on in our town, I'm curious if you have any knowledge of what happened in the Chesapeake Bay with the osprey this year, and the potential cause with the menhaden fishing, overfishing. We lost nearly, in our town alone, every osprey chick. We actually have one that is being overwintered in New Kent, but it was awful. Normally we'd rescue 1 or 2 babies in a year. They were literally just falling out of the nest. Adults abandoned them, and they were emaciated. It was horrible to see, and I'm truly concerned about next year, because as you talk about the DDT and what happened, and I don't know if this is going to hit us really bad very suddenly. Colonial Beach, but it's up and down the Chesapeake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh.
I know of this, but I don't know what the cause is, and I don't know. Somebody else may know if research has actually been able to reveal anything.
Well, we've been trying to find out, and what the closest thing we could find is off the Chesapeake in Northumberland County is a company called Omega, specifically the omega-3.
Yeah,
They're overfishing the Menhaden. There's a lot
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
right.
same
And
thing's happening in the Gulf, has
Right.
been for a long time. I'm right about that in the Gulf.
don't know
It's
if
awful.
that has a connection. Yeah.
But well, osprey tend to go for larger fish than menhaden. But the loss of menhaden could works its way up the food chain, and it could mean the loss of larger fish.
Or the specific nutrients. That's just
Yeah.
it. It's the fatty oils that they provide, and that we're
Yeah.
trying to find out, because it was devastating this year.
Yeah,
Devastating, and I'm really, really worried for who's going to come back, if we have any back.
I mean, it could be a combination of things. I don't know. I mean, it could be. I don't know. Has anybody made a link between this and avian flu? I mean, that's what they're now doing with the bald eagle. They're
There were no symptoms of that. No
no
neurological
symptoms of that.
It was all emaciation, across the board,
Yeah.
and the adults leaving, abandoning.
But do the eggs seem to be healthy? Do you know?
Again, because of regulations, we couldn't approach the eggs. Any seen on the cams.
Yeah.
I actually had to climb up and the one time for that one and rebuild that nest, but that was a separate situation.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and there at times 3 chicks and all died.
Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I don't know.
never seen anything like it. But yeah, thank you.
But it's something I'll eventually, I will eventually learn about, because I'm writing about the Chesapeake in my book, and but
Yeah.
So sorry, I don't have an answer for
But
you.
it'll be good. I guarantee you he'll dig.
Because it doesn't seem like there's anybody taking the wild ones.
Except for Omega.
Yeah.
Looking into this, looking into that. So our group specifically is trying to, really dig into this, because it was devastating.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many people out there, environmentalists, anybody, are realizing the truly every nest. I've never seen anything like it.
Must be. I mean, somebody must be taking notice.
Oh,
this.
they are, but
Not doing anything about it.
research for
Yeah.
their area or
Yeah.
specific, and nobody's
Right.
going for the overall.
Yeah.
We're working on it. We're trying
Yeah.
to-
Well, thank you for doing that.
Okay. Well, I guess we've got to move on, but Jack, we are
Yeah.
honored that you're here. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for
I'm
your
honored to be
comments.
here.
And
Thank you.
so Jack will be around for the rest of the evening, even though he has a 5 o'clock flight in the morning. What a gentleman he is. We are going to do a video for online and for us to share on it. And then Amanda and Randy and I are going to do an auction wrap up. So please stay tuned. Thank you.
It's on. Hi. That's not working. On. Nope.
Hello. Attention. We're
I
going to
don't.
get
It's not me.
moving
Oh, there it is.
forward
Hello. Oh,
with
hey,
our
it is working.
auction roundup. Can you not hear us?
That's because they're talking.
No, test. 1, 2, 3.
Hi.
What a nice compliant group.
Oh.
Thank you so much. We're going to do a short little auction roundup because, of course, all of this is very important for us to do our work at the Wildlife Center of Virginia. So we're hoping that you're going to bid now, bid often, bid big before we get done at 9 o'clock. So go ahead.
Our goal in doing this is we're just going to highlight a few of the many auction items just to showcase some things. We can also talk about other ways to contribute, but our goal is to get through this and be done at like 8:40 or something. So you guys have plenty of time to really focus on your phones or devices or whatever.
We're not going to go in through every item.
No, we're not, that's like 200 items or
All right.
something.
Okay.
So we are starting with, I think we have a slideshow,
Yes.
hopefully.
Okay,
Oh,
we're going to
it's you.
start. Yes, Mangelson's Pygmy Owl. For all of us owl lovers out there, this is a beautiful piece. I will tell you, I insisted this one be considered and brought up here for highlighting. Thomas Mangelson is one of the best wildlife photographers in the world. A lot of people know his work on polar bears, but his work on small species is phenomenal. And this is an incredible print that we hope as that you will enjoy. And it's an adorable pygmy owl that would look perfect in your living room.
Are you bidding on this?
I have too much art. My husband tells me. I tried to bid on stuff and he told me I have too much art.
That's impossible.
I didn't think it was impossible. Possible.
Great. So that is auction item number 66. You can place your bids.
Super. My turn. I'm going to talk about auction item number 8. Although, first of all, I must say that this is, I believe, the first time that I've ever appeared on a stage after a Pulitzer Prize-winning author.
Oh, well.
Now, I should say that I won a spelling bee in 3rd grade. So, you know,
Hey, Randy!
I've got some credentials too, not exactly the same. The Wildlife Center auction is completely made up of items that are donated to the center. Wildlife Center hasn't bought any of these things. I know that you go to many nonprofit auctions and there'll be some items, you know, like Super Bowl tickets and whatnot. Not here. These have all been donated, including this auction item number 8,
which is a black prong package. It's a Florida resort. And there are two people here from Black Prong. I see them in the back. If you have additional questions, please talk to them. I spent 3 minutes talking to them about this resort, and I desperately want to go. When we talk about Florida resorts, this is not Key West. This is not Lauderdale. This is not South Beach. This is not Tampa. This is not theme park. This is a nature-centered, equestrian-centered resort. A state-of-the-art facility. If you have a horse, think about taking your horse on vacation with you here.
There you go.
If you,
Oh, you can.
you can.
Absolutely.
You can stay, you can get a cabin that is horse adjacent, but a stall is right next door.
They said you can stay under the same roof as your horse. That sounds so fun. I don't even have a
Yeah.
horse, but that sounds fun.
If you don't have a horse, that's okay. This is a beautiful natural resort in the middle of a huge state forest. It sounds like a remarkable place to visit. I encourage you to check out the website. Those of you in the room, talk to the Black Prong people and bid on this auction. I think it's underbid at this point, so please pay attention.
Absolutely.
Auction item number 8.
This is an incredible opportunity for you all.
Next up, I think some of the really cool things in the Wildlife Center auction are experiences. We have different experiences. So if you are like Meg and you're like, I cannot have more artwork to put on my walls are full, or I have enough jewelry or whatever, we have some really unique experiences. So if you don't want stuff and things, go and do. And one of the really cool experiences is this special elk tour. Now, I don't know if you all are familiar with the elk reintroduction program in Virginia. It takes place in the southwestern part of the state. They offer elk tours annually, and these typically fill up a year in advance, and it's like a bus tour. So you're along with a bus full of people. But somehow Connor wrangled a very small, exclusive private tour for up to 4 people plus Connor.
There you go. You get Connor too.
Because he's like, I'm going to go. So you get this very small exclusive elk tour and get to hear about the history of elk and the reintroduction. And hopefully, if you are very lucky, you get to see the elk and ideally hear them bugle. I don't know. Can you bugle like an elk?
No, but it's...
Okay.
Okay, Connor, bugle. You can't because
Oh,
he's recovering.
He's still
coffee.
recovering.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. You will have to do it on the trip.
Elk bugling is, to me, in my opinion, is beautiful and amazing. And there's something like just very, I don't know, amazing about it. It's hard to put into words. There's something like very emotional. It evokes a lot of emotion. So truly a really unique experience. That is auction item number 22. Go see the elk and take Connor along. And I think you get a picnic too.
Connor and a picnic? I mean, what could be better? Okay, so the next 2, I get to talk about because apparently that's part of the art that was on my walls, but it's now not on my walls. And those are the 2 Charlie Harper prints. So Hexit and Bark Eyes. This is Hexit. It's a Charlie Harper print that my husband and I collected a number of years ago. I am a huge Charlie Harper fan, but the staff at the center said there was this group of people who love Charlie Harpers. So I said, okay, I can give up 2 of them. And so Hexit is one for an owl lover. And it's kind of the Pennsylvania Dutch perspective of a barn owl flying through. And then the second one is called Bark Eyes, which is that birch background where you can't see the owl, but it's mixed in with the background. Great pieces of art. I have to say I'm very biased. but they're lovely Charlie Harpers. So for those of you that love this whimsical artist who passed away, unfortunately, a number of years ago, but who shared enormous numbers of stories from Cincinnati, I encourage you to look at the Charlie Harpers, the 2 auction items, Hexit and Bark Eyes.
Another couple of experiences in the auction. Again, if you're like, I love Charlie Harper and he is pretty cool. But if you're like, I just can't have more artwork, we have a couple of release experiences. One is a Bald Eagle release sponsor. And on this experience, you get to come along with the Wildlife Center staff to a Bald Eagle release. And of course, you'll coordinate with the staff. We don't really know, who and when is next. So we'll agree, give you some heads up planning time. But when you go on that release experience, you are the one who gets to open the crate door. You're it, man. You are the final stop between that bird and its freedom. So you get the honors of opening the door, and it really is amazing. We also get a different experience. Auction item number 24 is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. It's releasing one of the little guys. So this, again, is a Connor experience, too. You don't get to release him, but he will go with you, and we'll coordinate with the winning bidder. So if you're like, I really, really love opossums, or I really love songbirds, or I really want to see a box turtle release, he can coordinate and try and, kind of get things going in the right direction. But it's releasing a littler guy. So it may not be that amazing, majestic bald eagle, but the little releases are really wonderful as well, and heartwarming, and every bit as emotional. And I believe Connor will take you to lunch.
That's correct.
And
Oh, what a guy!
Connor's very
Connor, all the
focused
time.
on lunch in his experiences, and I think he might also take you for ice cream.
We forgot one thing on the Charlie Harper. I believe Connor will come to your house and hang it on the wall. I think that's
Connor!
I'm not sure about that.
He'll bring you ice cream.
If I may say one thing about the Eagle release, Ed Clark, the president and co-founder of this organization, released scores of bald eagles. And he said to the Richmond Times-Dispatch one time, every time I do it, my heart stops.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that this experience will be heart-stopping with an eagle, or frankly, with a possum or a rabbit or a squirrel or a wren or a whatever. They're all great experiences, so please pay attention to these items. This is a great experience for you, for your friends, for your family. So think about it, bid on it, please.
Can we release Connor too?
No.
We don't want to release
He's non-releasable.
you. Okay, you're not going to be released. Okay, we're keeping you, Connor. Sorry. Okay, so I guess I'm next. Afton Wine Tasting. Our very kind volunteer, Amy in the back, has done, I love that page. Very good. Very good. The Vanna White page is showing off our kind host. She has offered her house for a wine tasting from the Afton Winery. They get to come hang out with me and Amy's husband. And Aaron, you can come along too. I think I'll bring my husband too. We'll go hang, and they're going to do a wine flight for the evening, and we're going to tell great stories and have a lovely evening together. So we hope you will join us and make that a great evening for a group of up to 7 of your best friends to come hang out at Amy's house on the mountaintop. So please join us for that wonderful experience. And thank you, Amy, for making this possible.
Yay. Okay, just a couple more to highlight. I think we lost our slideshow, but that's okay. we do, oh, there we go. We have a couple of auction items that are from our 7 black bears at the Wildlife Center. So right now we have 7 black bear cubs in our care. They came in this past spring. They'll be with us until next spring. Right now, as of last week, they were eating like just under 1,000 pounds of food a week. And then they just upped that because they were like, well, the bears are still hungry. So they are growing rapidly, but to commemorate this class of, I know they graduate in 2025, but we think of them as they're the Cubs of 2024. We do have 2 pieces of artwork in the auction. One is a double framed of the 2 natural sibling bears, double yellow and double lavender. So that's a small little side by side. And then we also have this larger framed of the other 5. And the colors used there correspond to the Cubs ear tags. So the orange prints you see there is from double orange tags, our double red tags. Now, these are the bear moms. We have a couple bear moms here. Where are you, bear moms?
Yay, bear moms!
The bear mothers helped facilitate these prints from the cubs when they were moving from our large mammal enclosure up to the bear complex. So this was back in, when was that? July? So they were smaller then. But these are pretty cool because you get some like bear hair in there too. I mean, they were like boop, boop. And yeah, so there's probably a little dirt and some bear hair in there. Very cool. One of a kind. You'd never find this in another auction ever.
Okay, Aaron, I do not have enough artwork. I need bear prints. Just saying, they're really cute. Build more walls. I like it. Listen to Sarah. She's got it. Okay. All right. So another item that we have is another experience for those like me who have apparently too much art, is a day at the Wildlife Center for you and 5 of your besties. We hope that you could come and spend literally a day with our great team, doing everything from helping fix meals to watching our vet staff, vet techs doing their work, treating animals, meeting our ambassadors, visiting with the team there, seeing what all we do and why we do it and how we do it. It's an incredible day at the center and a great opportunity. It's auction item number 5. So please bid it up because it's great fun to spend a day at the Wildlife Center.
Yeah, no 2 days are alike. And it is, I think we're all very good hosts and it's always a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Yes, we do have lunch too. Connor will bring ice cream.
Connor does do a bit of everything. Will you bring coffee too? Coffee and donuts? Okay, good. All right, we're good. Please come to the Wildlife Center.
All right, well, we have a couple of donation items to highlight, I think, and then we will let you focus 100% on those bids before we hit 9 p.m.
Auction item number 50, you don't take home anything. You don't get an item to take home. You don't get an experience. What you get to do is help build the Wildlife Center facilities. We have had 3 flight pens that we use for smaller raptors. This is not for bald eagles or vultures, but this would be for Cooper's hawks and owls. We had 3. We tore those down before they fell down. We replaced those 3 and we built 3 more. In the rehab process, in the recovery process, I think of this as being like if we go to the hospital and have hip surgery, we spend some time in the hospital, and then we might spend some time in a recovery room, but then we go to rehab, which is where we learn how to walk again or use our shoulder again or use our knee again. These flight pens are basically that rehab facility for birds. It's where they regain their ability to fly. It's where they get their stamina back, their strength back. So it's a really important step in the process of getting an animal ready to go back out into the wild. We often now have a wait list to get in to a flight pen. We have a wait list internally. We also have a wait list externally in that there are other rehabbers who are dealing with raptors who need a place for those birds to recover, and they need to come to us. Well, they can't come to us if the facility is full up. So that's why we've expanded this. The construction on these flight pens is almost done. What's not almost done is raising the money to pay for it. So that's what this is about, is those last minute donations to help us finish this construction and open this facility to Dr. Carr and her crew. I hope you guys watched that video of the animals that we release. I've worked at the Wildlife Center for 19 years. I still get a little choked up when I see these stories. And this is not the work I do. I don't ever touch an animal, but I am in unending awe and admiration for Dr. Carr and her team, the folks who day after day after day after day care for these wild animals in need. We're able to do that only through your financial support. And this is one way you can help that work. So please, this is one of the auction items that does not close at 9 o'clock.
Yep.
So if at 9:05, you look at the items you bid on and you didn't get everything, and you still have money burning a hole in your pocket, so to speak, please consider making a donation to item number 50. That's the flight pens. Thanks.
Thank you, Randy.
The other way, again, if you are outbid and you just can't raise it any higher and you have money burning a hole in your pocket, the other way you can donate is through a very bizarre, technically 2 buckets, but we'll just focus on one because I have the microphone and I'm in charge now.
I have a microphone too.
So Elvis is a long-standing tradition at the Wildlife Center. We auction him off every year at the gala. The winner gets to choose where he lives for the next year, and then Elvis comes back to the Wildlife Center, and then we do it all over again. We've done this since time began. It predates me. I've been there for more than 2 decades. After this amount of time, Elvis is ready for retirement. Elvis is leaving the building. There are 2 options here, 2 donation buckets, if you will. You get to choose with your dollars. One bucket, Elvis gets to say the Wildlife Center. And then the other bucket that's really exciting is sending Elvis to Ed. Ed Clark, president. And yes, we like that. President Emeritus Ed Clark, founder of the Wildlife Center of Virginia, retired earlier this year. Elvis is retiring. Who better to show Elvis how to retire than Ed Clark? Ed Clark has multiple houses. He has a cabin. It seems
He has
like
a
Elvis
boat.
he has a boat.
Yeah, he has a
you're right, he
boat.
has a boat.
You can put it on the boat.
Elvis could have such a good retirement, y'all. So please donate your money to send Elvis with Ed Clark, Ed and Elvis together forever, the end. Okay, moving on.
Now, to borrow a phrase from the king, we need a little less conversation, a little more action. And that's bidding, because it's now or never. The auction closes at 9 o'clock, although these buckets will stay open a little bit later than that.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in helping determine where Elvis is going to spend his retirement years, please choose one of these 2 options, and the dollars raised will determine where Elvis spends.
And I'm
most of his
sure
time.
that Randy would share his option with Ed. So whatever you do, I have a feeling that Ed is your choice number 1. Let's make sure that Elvis goes to Ed in honor of Ed.
Yes. All right, we have 15 minutes until this auction closes. Do we have any final advice before we let you get down to it?
I will just say that the last minute is always the most intense bidding. So please pay attention to the clock. When the hammer comes down at 9 o'clock, it's over. I don't care if you've lost your internet connection, if Aunt Tilly calls, if the dog's barking to get out, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
9 o'clock is 9 o'clock. And please remember, we joke about this, but it really is important. The dollars you spend on this auction make possible the life-saving work of the Wildlife Center. So please bid generously, bid recklessly. It's not a matter of what you're buying. It's a matter of what you're supporting. And these are just special gifts that go along with your contribution. So please check out the auction. We have about 15 minutes left. I think we're going to be quiet so y'all can get about your business. We have less than 15 minutes.
13 minutes.
13 minutes and counting. So
One
check out the catalog, and I'm going to turn back over to Amanda because she said she has one more thing. Oh, she doesn't. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I'll say one more thing. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for supporting the Wildlife Center. Thank you, Jack, again for your great presentation. And thank you for making everything possible that we do here. Enjoy your evening and bid a lot.